Hello everyone. Before we begin our descent, make sure to like and subscribe to Hush Ledger. Leaving a comment telling us where you re-listening from helps the algorithm keep you in the dark with us. Now, let's begin. Story 1. The Pattern at Station 7. I've been a security guard for exactly 43 days. The job was simple. Sit in a small, windowless booth at the main gate of the Omnicorp data farm, Station 7, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'd do a patrol on the hour. Every hour, a slow walk around the perimeter of the main building. The rest of the time, I was in the booth, watching 16 black and white monitor screens that show empty hallways and silent server rooms. I drank bad coffee from a thermos, the kind that tastes like burnt plastic and desperation. The only smell was the synthetic lemon from the cleaning crew's wipe down at 10:15, which would slowly fade into the scent of my own stale breath and cold concrete. The first month was numbingly quiet. Then, I started noticing the pattern. It was on the monitor for Hallway B, Sublevel 2, a motion-activated light. Every night, at 17 a.m., the light would flick on. It would stay on for exactly 3 minutes. Then, it would click off. The camera showed an empty, gray corridor. Nothing more. Voice drops to a whisper the first time. I shrug it off. A faulty sensor, a power surge, but it happened again the next night. 17 a.m. on. 3 minutes, off. Empty hallway. I mentioned it to Dave, the day shift guy, during handover. He just laughed, his breath smelling of buttered toast. Yeah, Station 7's ghost, old news. Probably just a timer from the old climate control system. Don't wet your pants over it, so I tried to ignore it. But in the deep silence of the night, with only the hum of the servers for company, that light became an event. I'd find myself watching the clock, my heart starting a low, dull thud as 15 approached. I'd stare at the dark screen for Hallway B, waiting. The click of it turning on would make me jump every single time. I'd lean in, my nose almost touching the cool glass of the monitor, searching the now illuminated corridor for a shadow, a shape, anything. There was never anything there. The dread started to root itself. It wasn't the light itself, it was the precision. The unwavering, mechanical precision of it. Nature isn't that exact, machines can be. But why? Why that hallway? Why that time? 2 weeks ago, I decided to be there. When the light turned on, I wouldn't be watching a screen. I'd be standing in the hallway. My 2 a.m. patrol felt different. The area in the sublevel was colder, smelling of ozone and dust. My footsteps on the linoleum floor echoed too loudly, a solitary announcement of my presence. I finished my round early and positioned myself at the far end of Hallway B, just outside the circle of darkness where the motion light would activate. I stood there, my back against the cold cinder block wall, the walkie-talkie on my hip feeling flimsy, useless. I watched my watch. 16. The second hand ticked. 17. The light didn't turn on. My blood went cold. I stood there for 5 minutes, then 10. Nothing. The hallway remained a tunnel of oppressive blackness. A sickening thought wormed into my mind. It knows I'm here. It only happens when I'm not. Defeated and shaking, I turned to leave. As I stepped back into the circle of darkness where the light should have been, it clicked on, blindingly bright, and I heard it. From the other end of the hallway, just around the corner, a sound, a wet, rhythmic scraping, like something heavy being dragged across the rough concrete floor. It was slow, deliberate. It matched the pace of my own frantic heartbeat. I froze. The walkie was in my hand, my thumb on the button, but I couldn't press it. I couldn't make a sound. The scraping stopped, and then came the laugh. It was low, guttural, a choking sound like a man drowning in his own throat. It wasn't human. I ran. I didn't look back. I slammed the door to the sublevel shut, my hand slipping on the metal handle, and scrambled back to the booth. The next night, I called in sick. I spent the night with all the lights on in my apartment, jumping at every sound from the street. But a man has bills to pay. I went back the following night, my resignation letter typed and printed in my backpack. I just had to get through one last shift. I did my patrols, avoiding hallway B entirely. I spent the time in the booth, my eyes glued to the monitor for that hallway. To 17 a.m. came, the light flicked on. The hallway was empty, but then I saw it. On the floor, in the middle of the illuminated section of the corridor, a single, dark smudge, a wet, glistening trail that led from the corner where I'd heard the laugh, and ended right where I had been standing. I never went back. I emailed my resignation. I still get emails from OmniCorp, automated reminders about my final paycheck. I delete them, but every now and then, I wake up in the dead of night. I'll look at my phone, to 17 a.m., and I'll lie there in the silence, listening, waiting for the scrape. Story 2. The Midnight Regular. I worked the graveyard shift at a 24-hour diner off the I-5, a place called the All-Night Egg. The air was a permanent cocktail of stale coffee, greasy bacon, and the faint, sweet smell of butterscotch candies that Marge, the other waitress, always sucked on. The clientele was a parade of truckers, insomniacs, and people running from something. It was a lonely job, but it was simple: pour coffee, flip burgers, don't ask questions. He first came in on a Tuesday, or maybe a Wednesday. The nights bled together. It was always around 1:30 a.m. he'd sit in the same cracked red vinyl booth at the very back, the one under the broken lamp that cast everything in a sickly yellow gloom. He was just a man, mid-40s, maybe. A worn-out baseball cap pulled low, a gray jacket. He never ordered food. Just coffee, black. The first time, it was normal. He drank his coffee slowly, staring out the window into the darkness beyond the parking lot lights. He paid in exact change, left a single dollar tipped, and left, no problem. He came back the next night. And the next, always the same booth, always the same order. But he started changing, not all at once. It was slow, a glacier shifting. He began talking to himself. At first, it was just a low mumble, his lips moving silently as he stared at his reflection in the dark window. Then, the mumbling got louder. I'd be refilling the ketchup bottles and I'd hear him. Fragments. Should have seen the look, and ... not my fault. It was the rain. His hands, resting on the formica table, began to shake. A fine, constant tremor. I told my manager, Carl. He just grunted, wiping down the grill. As long as he pays, he stays. We don't judge the night people, Sarah. We just feed him. So the dread became a part of my routine. The 1:30 dread. I'd watch the clock, my stomach tightening as the hour approached. I'd hear the soft chime of the door, see his silhouette, and feel a cold knot form in my chest. One night, he didn't look out the window. He looked at me. His eyes were a flat, lifeless gray, and he tracked my every movement across the diner. I could feel them on my back, a physical pressure. When I brought his coffee, my hand shook so badly the cup rattled on the saucer. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was a stretch of lips over teeth, empty and cold. "Long night," he said. His voice was like gravel. "Sure is," I whispered, retreating fast. The next escalation was the smell. A week later, he walked in and a wave of odor hit me. It was sour, putrid, like rotten meat left in the sun. Mixed with the damp earth of a freshly turned grave, it clung to the air around his booth. The truckers at the counter noticed, shooting disgusted glances his way, but no one said anything. We were all prisoners of the same unspoken rule of the night. Don't make waves. Then, last Thursday, it happened. He was in his booth, mumbling louder than ever, his fists clenching and unclenching. The smell was overwhelming. I was wiping down a table, trying to breathe through my mouth, when I saw it. On the floor, under his table, a dark, wet spot was forming, dripping from the cuff of his pants onto the linoleum. It was thick and red. My blood turned to ice. I dropped the rag and walked, as calmly as I could, to the back. I called the police from the landline, my voice a frantic whisper. "There's a man at the all-night egg. I think he's hurt, or something." I heard the sirens in the distance, growing closer. A sense of relief washed over me. It was almost over. I peeked out of the kitchen door. The booth was empty. He was gone. The police found nothing. No blood, though I know what I saw. They wrote it off as a prank call. Carl was pissed. I quit on the spot. I thought it was over. I got a day job at a bookstore. I try to sleep at night, but 2 days ago, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single, folded napkin from the all-night egg. On it, written in what looked like dry, brown ink, was a message. Voice drops to a terrified whisper. "I liked your coffee, Sarah. I found a new place to sit. It's quieter, closer to you." I look out my window now, every night, at the houses across the street, at the dark spaces between the streetlights. I'm not watching for a man in a gray jacket. I'm listening for the chime of a door that shouldn't be opening. Story 3. The Breathing Walls. My name is Leo, and for 2 years, my sanctuary was the Northwood Public Library. The night shift was a solo gig, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., a custodial and security detail they called library watch. It was perfect for a grad student. The silence was a physical thing, a blanket of old paper and settled dust. My world was the soft buzz of the fluorescent lights over the main reading room and the scent of aging bindings and polished oak. I'd do my rounds, pushing a cart to collect stray books, the squeak of its wheels the only conversation I needed. It was peaceful. It was mine. The first sign was a sound, not a loud one. A soft, rhythmic hush, hush. I first heard it in the history section, deep in the non-fiction stacks. I thought it was the HVAC system kicking on, a new vent I hadn't noticed. But it was too organic, too wet. It sounded like breathing. Slow, deep, and labored, as if whatever was making it had congested lungs. I'd stop, hold my own breath, and listen. It would stop the moment I did. The silence that rushed back in felt attentive, hostile. I'd chalk it up to the building settling, to the strange acoustics of a place filled with so many absorbent surfaces. That the dread began to seed itself. I started taking different routes on my rounds, avoiding the deep history stacks after 1 a.m. Then, the cold spots began. You'd be walking a perfectly temperate aisle, and then you'd step into a pocket of air so frigid it made the hairs on your arms stand up. It wasn't a draft, it was a stillness, a dead, biting cold that felt ancient. I'd feel it most often in the biography section, near the shelf for local authors. One night, my phone, which I'd left on the reshelving cart, shut down completely. When I picked it up, the metal casing was ice cold to the touch, and the screen was beaded with a fine, almost imperceptible condensation. I started talking to the library itself. Just me. I'd call out softly as I entered a new room. A stupid habit, but it made me feel less like an intruder in my own workplace. One night, deep in the silence, I whispered, "Is anyone there?" From the children's section, tucked away in the far corner, came a sound. 3 soft, distinct taps, tap, tap, tap. My blood froze. It was an answer. It had to be. I stood there for a full minute, my heart hammering against my ribs, before I forced my feet to move. I walked towards the children's section, my flashlight beam shaking. The room was empty, filled with the silent, watching faces of stuffed animals on the shelves. The little wooden toy train on the storytime rug was perfectly still. The escalation was subtle, insidious. Books began to be misplaced, not just any books. Specifically, books about grief, about loss, about local unsolved crimes. I'd find them lying flat on tables in the morning, open to a specific, poignant passage. A book about a child who went missing in the 80s was left on the main desk, open to a photo of the boy's mother, her face a mask of eternal sorrow. The air around the book carried that same frigid chill. The breathing got louder. It wasn't just in history anymore. I'd hear it from the periodicals, a wet, rattling inhale from between the racks of newspapers. I'd hear it echoing softly from the marble staircase. It was following me, learning my route. The breaking point came last Tuesday. I was in the basement, in the archives, fetching a box of old municipal records. The light down there was a single, bare bulb, and the air was thick with the smell of damp concrete and forgotten things. I found the box, and as I turned to leave, the light went out. Not a flicker, a definitive, total blackness. Sound of a sharp, panicked breath. I fumbled for my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut a weak swath through the oppressive dark, and that's when I heard the breathing right behind me. Not through a wall, not from a vent, it was inches from the back of my neck. I could feel a faint, cold mist on my skin with each labored exhalation. I spun around, my phone's light jerking wildly. There was nothing there, but the beam caught the concrete wall. And on the wall, blooming in the condensation of its breath, was a handprint. It was small, a child's handprint. The fingers were too long, too thin, and it was pressed into the wall as if whatever made it had been standing right there, watching me in the dark. I ran. I left the box. I left my keys. I practically flew up the stairs and out the front door, not even bothering to set the alarm. I never went back. I called in, resigned, and refused to set foot in the building again. The head librarian, a kind woman named Barbara, called me a week later. She said they'd found something during the inventory after I left. In the local history archives, tucked behind a box of land deeds, was a small, hidden space. Inside was a child's wool mitten, decayed with age, and next to it, a single, yellowed newspaper clipping from 1972. It detailed the unsolved disappearance of a 7-year-old boy named Timothy, who had last been seen heading to the old Northwood Library on a Saturday afternoon. Voice a broken whisper. I live in an apartment now, with all the lights on. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I'll wake up, the room will be silent, and then, from the corner, I'll hear it. A soft, wet, rhythmic sound. Hush, hush, hush. I don't turn on the light. I'm too scared of what I might see printed in the condensation on the window. Or worse, what I might not see, standing right beside me. If you have a story you'd like to share with the Ledger, send it to our email. The link is in the description below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more true horror stories every week. You're not just listening, you're bearing witness. Good night.